Good evening, everybody, and how are you all doing? Let's give me 2 ticks to see exactly what's happening here in this. Um, Tonight, myself and my darling, darling, dear sister friend, Vida B, are going to be talking all things tantric, fasting, the news story, family constellations, all the stuff that we absolutely love. And we're kind of buzzing about all the stuff that we've got coming up over the next few months for you guys. So let's start off, I think, Vida, with your. So, first of all, one of the things that we're doing is Vida's doing her retreat, and then I'm doing a retreat, but you can come and do them because they're back to back. And so Vida's retreat will lead into mine. So you can do both, or you can do one, or you can do the other. It's completely up to you. That all these options. So you're going to, this is your latest kind of creation, isn't it? Coming from again all the traveling and all the new stuff you've been learning, and old stuff, just putting everything together as we do. So do you want to talk about it? It's tantric. Can you
Yes.
explain to people what that is? Because I think there's a whole load of, as we found out at the Goddess Gathering, there's people have got a lot of kind of fear around it. They don't fully understand what it is. So can you make it clear what the retreat's about?
I can. I don't know if I can make it clear about Tantra because that's, there are many interpretations, but I'll definitely talk about the retreat and make that clear. I mean, Tantra basically, to me, it means, well, it actually means woven together or like weaving together. So you'll understand maybe like this tantric breath. But then everyone thinks Tantra is about having sex with a partner or with someone else. But that's not what it means to me, and that's not how I work with it. So this weaving together, if you think about this life force energy that's all around, this whatever you want to call it, some people might call it God, universe, source, whatever it is that when you plug in and you get um, that feeling, that feeling, when you just, it's like you've just plugged yourself into something and you're like, wow, that is your life force energy. So if you're not weaving together with that, if you're separate from that, where's your life force energy coming from? Where is it? What is it? So for me, that's what this retreat's about. That's what working with Tantra is about, is recognizing your connection to the divine, to consciousness, to God, to source, to nature, spirit, to whatever you want to call it, but the thing that makes us feel alive. And that's what the retreat's going to be about. So also with that feeling, as you'll know, comes a lot of pleasure. It's a pleasure feeling, isn't it? It's like, wow, I'm part of this and this is part of me. And all the shit just kind of disappears for a bit. You're like, whew. So you get it in breath work and you're like, yes, you're nodding there because it's like happens all the time. So yeah, that's what it's about. It's about how are you connected to your life force, to pleasure, to your tantra in your life, tantric life. And that can be through breath and all sorts of other practices. So on the retreat, we will be working with pleasure specifically.
Mm-hmm. Well, who can argue with that? I think we all need to be working with pleasure. We need to be distracted from, I think there's never been a more important time to learn about the body, about pleasure, about how to keep yourself in a state. Oh, there's Lorna. Hi, Lorna. Um, so I think exactly what you were saying there, that was the thing that made me create the 3 day, well, it's actually over 4 days water fasting extravaganza. Because when we did the last fast, the breath work was just off the charts. And I thought we could play around with this an awful lot more, because exactly what you're saying there, people are doing all sorts of things, chasing that feeling. And I think we've all done it. We're looking for a partner because you want to feel love. Looking for the bottle of wine because you want to feel peaceful. Looking for the cigarette for whatever it is, or whatever it is that you do. We're chasing the feeling, and what we're really realizing now is that when we get rid of all the blockages, because there's sort of two ways from the Sedona method perspective how we look at it. It's like, how do you want to feel, and what's stopping you feeling like that?
Yeah.
Because we've all tapped into it, whether it's been artificially or organically, maybe at a sunset, maybe at a sunrise, maybe your pet, your partner, whatever. We've all had that intense feeling of unconditional love where all the boundaries dissolve, even to the skin boundary dissolves, where we all feel very, and we feel that interconnection that is. But then we go back to being this like solid lump of meat that's separate and struggling to survive in these times where life's just been crazy over probably for more than 4 years, but certainly over the last 4 years a lot of things have been really exacerbated and brought to the surface. So it's going to be really, really cool to take people from your retreat straight into let's take the food out and let's create that space. And obviously there's 3 coming to do the 2. Actually, I think I've only got one space for one guy, which is yours women only.
Yeah, women only, yeah.
You're women only, so but I can take one guy in the fasting, and I think there's room for one more female sharing. So we're probably getting pretty close to full anyway, but certainly, things can change and happen. So please, if you're interested in coming to join us, let us know and we'll see what we can do. So let's talk about, because obviously you're famous for family constellations, Vida family constellation. And, I think for people that don't know what family constellations is yet, it's kind of stepping into the roles of your ancestors. I'll let you explain it in your way after I explain it and how I see it, to release past family traumas, which obviously my big passion being letting go. What I love about family constellations is the role play side to it, where even if I know somebody's resisting letting go, if they're not ready, then I can't really force them into admitting it. Whereas with family constellations, it kind of goes round the houses and your conscious mind's taken out of it, isn't it? And it's played out, and all the kind of pain from the past can literally unwind and dissolve right in front of everybody's eyes. So I just feel, I love that. I love that you can bypass the conscious, because that's what we're always trying to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of the time we want to know, the mind is trying to figure it out, wanting control, wanting security, wanting approval, waiting for things to change, wishing people and things were different, taking things personally. And that's where all the suffering comes from. It's when we start to unwind and unfurl all of that, which we'll be doing between your retreat and then between the letting go techniques we'll be using in mine. There's going to be just a massive, massive opportunity for space that perhaps, in these is going to be, 6-7 days, actually nearly a week. It's going to
be massive.
It's going to be incredible what we can create. Because I always just see it like that. I don't know if you've read the book, The Body Holds the Score.
Yeah.
And, Johan, Harry, Gabor Mate, Van Besselbort, they're all telling us, that basically the subconscious is like the hard drive of the computer. The whole history is there. It's just that your computer will start slowing down, taking longer to do things, won't boot up because it's still got all that old information on it. And that's really, and obviously not just the stuff that's been created willingly and unwillingly in this lifetime, but obviously we're understanding as well what's coming in the DNA, and how past traumas, even if you have no idea that you're still holding a charge to it, you can be. Because I know that happened to me. A kinesiologist, when I was doing the emotion code, she said, "What happened to when you were 32?" And I was kind of looked, and it was a long time ago when I was 32. My marriage broke up. My uncle drowned. Joanna was diagnosed with leukemia. Now I couldn't really have. That's the only year of my life I could tell you, because it was such a so many big things happened, but I didn't know I was still carrying all the pain of that. No idea. So do you find that with people who just absolutely no idea that what's going on in the subconscious. And
No idea. I mean, I think most of us really, because how can you? You just know what's happened to you. You know what was painful, and you just kind of move on in whatever way you can to just survive it. And unless you go and say, oh, I'm going to do therapy on every single bad thing or painful thing that's happened to me, you don't really know. So you just think, oh, I've dealt with that, or I'm okay with that. And you would never necessarily be able to join the two dots of saying, well, this is happening in my life, and it's a result of not actually having processed that happened before. And it can manifest in all sorts of ways. It can play out. It's very obvious. It's when it's like repeated patterns, but it could also be like in the physical. It can be health issues, which is really common. Or it can be affecting you financially in all sorts of ways that you would just wouldn't necessarily think, oh, I just haven't really fully been able to process that. It's fascinating, but once you start looking, then yeah, it all comes through. Do you know what I was thinking was interesting there? That we've both created these events with the same kind of inspiration without having spoken to each other about it, and then not actually planned that they were going to be back to back like this. How
I know,
beautiful is that?
I
It
know
just
it's
like it
absolutely
just birthed
perfect.
itself. It totally wanted to take form and did
Yes,
in such a way.
absolutely. Yeah, I know it's amazing. Hi, Marion. Good to see you guys here. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit. So, if anybody's got any questions, please just ping them in the box and we'll get to them and answer them. But let's talk about really, I think, the most exciting part of, what are we? I think most people, certainly most people that be watching us, know that this is a time of pretty significant change. And that a lot of the time that can be quite a challenge, emotionally, often physically, financially. I think a lot of people are struggling there as well. So we kind of know that something's going on, but nobody really, really knows what is going on. You're kind of like, obviously, I'm studying the Bible, and I'm like, oh, well, I quite like that story that Jesus is going to come back and fix everything. I wish I could really, really, really believe that with all my heart, because it must be lovely to have that level of faith. But your amazing teacher, who I've also done a podcast with, she really brought the new story, although we kind of been talking about it, to give it that title, the new story. Can you explain about that?
Yes. Okay. I'll talk about Susan Elswager's new story, my teacher, and then I'll talk about what we're doing with it now. So she brought this through. It came as a download to her about 40 years ago, and she just didn't know what to do with it. But it was this new story of dissolving separation and what's your place in it, and that's what she really works with. Her offerings are very much geared around what is your place, your specific place in the new story. If you're looking seven generations down the line at your descendants and you're looking them eye to eye, and they're saying, what did you do in this changing time? Like, what is your place? And it's different for every single one of us. It's not that we all have to be activists, or it's the within. It's the what did you do within. So this new story that she's talking about is being able to surrender to this flow that you have got no choice over, because it's happening. It's happening. You can't stop it from happening because it's a collective shift. But what are you going to do? Are you going to hold on to that little branch as this whitewater rapids gush past you and hold on for dear life? Or are you going to actually trust and just let yourself go into the flow of that? So that's the new story from her perspective. How I weave it in with, she also works with family constellations as well. But what's come through for me really strongly is this new story of no separation, but using family constellations principles to help explain that. So in family constellations, we're working usually with a victim and a perpetrator dynamic. So in every scenario, if everyone thinks of their ancestors or granny and granddad or mum and dad or even you're talking to your friend and they say, oh, you'll never believe it, so and so told me this today, and there's always a that's terrible, or oh, poor her, and it's not to say that we should all stop feeling for people, but there's always a victim and there's always a perpetrator somewhere along the way. And so for us as a collective, how do we start to dissolve that? How do we start to listen differently? How do we start to communicate differently? How do we start to process things within us differently that either leaves you victimized, which happens to us most of the time because it's how we're conditioned to feel, well, that wasn't fair for me, I didn't like it. So then you're now in a victim consciousness. And quite often what you were talking about, what you might be holding in your body for since you were 32, there's a victim story within that, because it was bigger than you. Trauma is something that's bigger than us and we can't process it, so we naturally become victimized. So this is the new story for me. How are we all able to change our perspective, shift within us, to expand, to be able to communicate and interact differently, not just within ourselves, but within our family units, within our friendships, within our work, within our collective? How do we actually start to do this differently? There's a new story here, and it's not them and us, baddies and goodies.
Yes, and this I think is going to be the biggest challenge, because I think you talked about it when you were talking about the news story. It's not about what you eat, because nutrition's become another thing to be so superior about. Oh, look what I eat, and compared to you, but that what it really comes down to is loving your neighbour, isn't it? I know, regardless of their postcode, their what team they support, what religion they are, all of that. And I think that's going to be the most challenging thing, because we're so divided, aren't we? Politics, everything is political now. People don't speak the truth at all because they're too scared they'll get cancelled. And we don't know who to trust. There's been a phenomenal change in how we perceive the government, the pharmaceutical companies, even the law. It's like everywhere you turn, it's like, well, they're getting paid to do, see and be the way they are. So therefore, you're not really seeing the true humans. That whole thing, well, oh, my boss told me, or whatever it was, like, or I would lose my job if I didn't do it. The whole kind of idea of like, where's your morals and what are you willing to give up, or not willing to give up, in order to be honest, ethical, moral, and stick to your values? Because that seems to me to be the biggest thing. You're seeing the absolute worst in humans, but you're also seeing the absolute best some ways. But how can we?
I think as well, we've never actually been taught how to stick to our morals without there being separation. So
yes,
if anyone, like most people can even understand, like we don't even know, a lot of us, how to have boundaries, just in normal daily life. So the way that you try to put in a boundary comes across as a and it causes some kind of backlash. When people start to say, well, that's not good, that's not okay for me, or this is, how do you actually stand up for your morals as an individual without what you're standing against becoming a perpetrator with judgment? So if you're standing up to a corrupt system, how can you stand up for those morals against corruption without the separation and the victim perpetrator mentality? It's like they don't go together, but that is the new story, and it is possible. That's what we're here for. Otherwise, we continue the power imbalance of power, one way, because there'll always be a bigger and a smaller in that sense.
Yes,
If we keep
and that's the problem, isn't it? Family constellations. I mean, I always love the way you say that. Who's the wee one and who's the big one? And the idea is that we're actually all the same. We all have to come to the same size. And
a victim perpetrator, yeah. If it's
yeah,
parents and children, there's big ones and wee ones. But if it's victims and perpetrators, they need to be the same size, exactly. Otherwise, otherwise there's this separation, and one has power and one doesn't.
Mm-hmm. I know, and that's because the way it looks to me is that we're going to have to, in order to get to that place, we're all going to have to stand in our power almost, and stand in that sovereignty, and just say we're not going to participate in poisoning the waters, we're poisoning the topsoil, we're going to find a way to work with Mother Nature. But there's going to have to be enough of us to do that. We're going to have to learn basic skills, maybe do out some of the shiny, sparkly things. I'm just really intrigued as to how it's going to pan out, and the judgment, the heavy, heavy judgment of each other that we all have.
I can't see a way through it without working on the judgments, and to do that, you have to work inside first. You have to work on your own shame, your own judgments, your own anger, all of the things that you get that you don't like in other people. It's how do we, you're not going to see it or be triggered by it in other people if it's fully resolved within you. If it's not resolved within you and it's not at peace within you, you're going to get triggered senseless by other people. It's not to say that we all have to become Zen masters and be monks. Emotions are important, and the flow of emotions, the ups and the downs and the bursts and then the peacefulness, like, it's all super important. But in terms of actually holding shame, blame, anger, judgment, fear, victim stories, these are so powerful that they are going to keep causing the separation. So this is why through family constellations, through this tantric work, where I am aiming to support in releasing shame and blame, especially through the family constellations, we're working on blame, judgments, and taking personal responsibility that everything's co-created. And through the tantric work, it's releasing shame, because that's the main blockage. So if we're looking at sexual abuse, or if we're looking at unsafety, or whatever it is that causes shutdown, that causes this, what you would refer to as sexual energy, but you can also just call life force energy or pleasure energy, as it comes through as the Kundalini. If you are not connected to that because you're shameful in any way, or you might not even know why you're not connected to it, it doesn't matter. If you're not connected to it, you're suffering, you're withering, and there's elements there that are going to come through as shame and separation. So when we start going into all of those energies, and you don't need to know why they're there, you don't need to go back into them to release them. Like, we don't need to do any of that. It's completely different with this new story, but there needs to be acknowledgement that a blockage is there and that shame is there. A lot of people just carry, oh no, I'm all right, just carry on. Everything's okay, just carry on.
It takes so much courage to admit, doesn't it? Because we want to deny that we ever felt like that, or that we, and also sometimes I think you forget as well. You forget. It's like in Sedona method, we talk about, you put an elastic band around your wrist. It might feel a bit tight, but if you leave it there long enough, you'll forget it's even there. And that's kind of what happens with the past. It doesn't mean to say that it's not causing an effect. And, again, from the Sedona method perspective, we talk about your health, your wealth, and your relationships. And I always say the relationships are the most important, because if you've got brilliant relationships, you'll probably have great health and a lot more wealth, because most of our wealth comes from relationships. And certainly when it comes to health, and, the more I've been kind of panning back and thinking about our healing centre, etc., if we don't have strong communities, you're constantly going to be putting back people that are got well or getting well back into a community where it can't be held. So that you can have as many healers and experts as you want in the world, but this is not something that happens with one person, but every one of us has to do the work. And, we've talked about this before, how, and I include myself in this, I'm sure you do it as well. If you're feeling good, you don't really want to go back into the mud. You've just had a shower, you're just like, like this kid on, that's not there, or oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. I'll use the analogy with a ski boot. If you've been skiing all day, and that feeling when you undo the clips and you go, ah, but in actual fact, you can just take the whole boot off and it feels even better. That it's almost like, as long as we can just feel a little bit of ease. And you know what you're saying about the kind of life force energy, whatever you want to call it. I personally see it as that kind of unconditional love frequency that we can tap into changing the frequencies of the brain and changing the tensegrities of the cell, so that energy flows, and because it feels amazing. And some people have not felt that maybe ever, depending on, and it's really sad. And I just think it's 2024. Come on, let's stop history repeating itself. Let's stop. We know what to do now. We know about the past. Let's just get on with the job in hand. And
I think there's some extra parts, because we know now, like, there's so much coming out around breath work and the science behind it and all. It's amazing. So it's reaching far and wide, and it's great. But there's another part that I feel like we need to dig down into, which is around shame, and the thing around this collective idea, especially, this is why my retreats for women, this idea of, like in Kate's workshop at the gathering, you're either, so you're either frigid or you're a whore, like it's the prostitute or the saint, or where are you in the scheme of things? And why? Why is it one or the other? This, whilst there's taboo in our community around sex, pleasure, it's all not talked about. Also, miscarriages, abortions, adoptions, any issues, women's issues with the womb, it's all even menstrual cycles. Okay, we're getting to talk a wee bit more about menopause and things coming more into but whilst all of this remains, hush hush, there's a shadow around it. There's a shame around your own, whether it means you've got a partner or not, whether it's self-pleasure or whether it's pleasure just through other ways in your body or your lifestyle. But whilst that whole thing is just on the outskirts, I can't see how we're going to make shifts. It has to come through these grassroots. We can grow our own food, we can do breath work, we can do meditation, we can do all of that. But if we're inside, if we're shameful, and we're still not talking about the fact that it's, you should only have sex with your partner in the bedroom with the lights off once a week or whatever it might be, depending on your family, depending on your religion, depending on your culture, your country. Whilst we're all held by these rules and ideas of right and wrong, we're not, like, every single one of us is a fingerprint. We have our own unique. I was talking to my mum today and I was like, imagine this energy as like, or imagine sex as this bowl of pasta. And everyone, if I eat a bowl of pasta, you eat a bowl of pasta, it's the same pasta, right? It's going to taste totally different to you as what it's going to, that whole experience is going to be different to you than it is to me. And then your body might have a different reaction to pasta than mine. You might not be able to have it 5 times a week. I can. Somebody might tell you at school or wherever you go, don't eat pasta because it's really bad for you and you're going to end up like this. Or, some people, anyway, it goes on and on. Or you might have choked on a bit of pasta once and you never want to have it again. Mm-hmm. Or somebody might have force-fed you pasta when you didn't want it and now you're completely traumatized by pasta. So it's completely different for every single individual. But if you talk about it as pasta, it's fine. But if you talk about it as an orgasm or sex, it's like, whoa, this is, and once it's normalized,
Uh-huh.
that's, for me, that's super important. When this is normalized and when people start to accept within themselves that they have blockages, and it might be physical painful blockages in your body when it comes to that, or it might be psychological, it might be emotional, there's all sorts. But once we start actually going there as individual women and taking our own responsibility for the fact that we're disconnected from our full potential, and I mean, when I say full potential, I don't just mean to orgasm, I mean to have pleasure in your life, to thrive and to glow and to have all of that same energy that you have after you've done an amazing breath hold.
Yeah.
And you squeeze and you squeeze and you squeeze and you squeeze and it goes up. And this this can also happen, doesn't just happen with breath. It can happen through sex, it can happen through all sorts. But this is like, it's not talked about. It's
Mhm.
shameful. Or you have to be like an exhibitionist.
Yeah.
So
Is there any is there any
women,
culture that doesn't perceive it like that?
I don't know. I mean, all the places I've been around the world, it's very different. I think some
Mhm.
places in Europe have a much healthier, but I don't know because I'm not from
Mhm.
there. All I know is how I was brought up here, and what happens in this country, in this United Kingdom, is really unhealthy for us as women and as men. But as women, and some, it can swing from one side to the other. We might be very active in that way, but it might not always be in a healthy way either. So you might think, oh, I'm great, I've got, I'm not blocked at all. But what's your relationship with it? And that doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy either. There are so many parts to what's going on down there and around in the body, especially if you've had pregnancies or children, or every single woman's got a story, an individual story with how sex was introduced to them and what's happened with their womb, their yoni, and all of their sexual energy with all the
Mhm.
different partners or not. Every single one of us is completely unique, and yet we all think we have to be the same.
Absolutely. And that's getting driven more and more now, isn't it? It's like the monoculture, it's everybody should be the same and should be getting the same results, should be interested. It's like, it's crazy. Kaz is on there. She's, yeah, once you feel that unconditional love frequency, you can't go back to business as usual for sure.
Hi,
Yeah.
Kaz.
And Lorna, she's saying collective gatherings to create collective feelings. That's basically, yeah, exactly. We know the enormous power of doing this work together because we did an inner dance training 7 days, 23 of us, and it was very clear that as soon as one person is willing to open up, it gives everybody their permission. So the courage comes from, somebody will lead, and then soon the floodgates open up. And it's not about you having to tell any secrets or anything like that. That's not about that at all. It's about willing just to be with your own body and intend that you're just going to be in this really expanded, clean, light state. Because when you're like that, everything just moves and flows anyway. It's really all we're doing is getting out the way. And we do like to get in the way so much. And I know when my friend's been in hospital for a couple of months now, and I was like, they did this, and you're not going to believe what they did to him. And I was like, oh, you're doing the victim perpetrator thing. Because that's, I mean, I know this stuff. I've got battered into myself. You batter it into me, and still you fall into the trap of separation. Is it because that's really what you're just like, well, there isn't. I mean, Hale Dwoskin talks about the apparent others. I love that because it just reminds you we're all one. But
Mm-hmm.
my God, sometimes it does not feel like that.
Yeah. And everyone, all of these different people, they're all they're all the archetypes that are within us. They're just representing the archetypes. So there is a part of you that can identify with that corrupt politician. You'd be like, I never would be like that. And we're all everything. And not, and of course, in Serena's words, we're all of it and all that's in between and none of it.
Yeah. Or are we?
Or are we?
Yeah, exactly. So, and the other thing that I wanted to talk about was for anybody who's experiencing dis-ease, you can use the constellations, because we talk about family constellation, but you can really do it with any system, can't you? Do you want to just go into that? So, for example, if somebody had cancer, say breast cancer, how do you use the constellation system to unravel that?
Well, it's family constellations is a part of it, but it's also called systemic therapy. So it applies, it's the same rules that apply or the formulas that apply to any system. So it might be your family system, it might be your business organization system, it might be your body, health, organs system. It can apply to anything. Actually, I'm going to start doing yoni constellations. So it will be this in separate parts.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be the entrance, the wall, the cervix. There might be pleasure there. There might be pain. There, and see what all of them. What are they all saying to each other? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's possible with anything. But yeah, the health. I've done quite a few on cancer and things. And what was coming up was like when you actually put an embodiment to the cancer, the energy of the cancer, when that's embodied and it speaks, it's fascinating. It's different for everyone where it's coming from. But the thing is that when in the constellation, when they were seeing the cancer as separate, nothing was moving. It was completely stuck. There was no flow. There was nothing. It was stuck. The cancer was over in the corner, sitting down, just rejected, excluded. The perpetrator. Actually, the healing movement was towards the end, was when actually cancer was accepted as part of the client herself.
Uh-huh.
You are part of me.
Yeah.
I am creating you. And
It's just the separation thing again, isn't it? Because I've heard a few people say, I just want it out. You just want to be separate from it, which is a perfectly natural and human feeling. But yeah, it's a completely different way to look at it. And it's
yeah,
really just about, and when we now know that certain parts of the reproductive and pleasure areas, all of these things have a consciousness, and they're almost like they have their own little universe there. And if we're holding, abuse, trauma, terror, fear, shame, blame, shame, complain, all of that there, then of course, how can it be as incredible as the full potential of somebody who's completely free?
yeah.
And
There
that's
was one that was quite interesting, Lilia. I think it was thyroid cancer, and it went back. It just had the energy of this story was coming through, and it was like fast, 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 fast. I have to go, have to go, have to do this. Can't stop to talk. Got to run. Got to do this. And the client recognized that behavior within herself. But it was really, really like stressed and needing
yeah.
to do this and understand this and like. But then when we went back, it went back. I don't even know how many generations, but it was in some kind of like concentration camp environment, and they were being forced work harder, 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 faster. Don't complain. Don't stop. I won't go into the whole constellation story of the healing movement, but it was fascinating. And when that was able to be acknowledged and worked,
Mm-hmm.
then the client completely calmed down.
Mhm.
And so it was this unresolved ancient old story that she
On
was
the
carrying
treadmill, on the treadmill, on the treadmill.
that had then manifested into the
Mhm.
thyroid cancer that was just like can't do it anymore.
Aye. Yeah, well, that's what happens, isn't it? The body absolutely just will stop eventually if it taps and it knocks and then it
Ah,
batters the door down. Well, that's me. Jesus Christ, said everything can do, you can do it even better. I think we need to get honest with ourselves. A lot of people are not and feel scared to go there. Once we go there and say it out loud exactly how we feel, we think we are at the end of the road to freedom. I was speaking at the weekend in Holland and said I am honest, but sometimes I'm dishonest. I'm a hard worker, but sometimes I'm lazy. I know who I am, far as I can go with it, but I believe it's because I'm honest. I think that's all I can see right now. Yes, mate. Oh, I miss you, May. Have you met May, Vida?
I don't know. Have I?
You might not have actually. She's come in the wild medicine retreats. Oh, she's a bloody scream. And she was speaking in Holland at the weekend, and it's all about that. A lot of the 12-step program, where really, if you do it properly, you're held accountable. You have to. I don't know why everybody doesn't do it. I've always meant to kind of really take some time to delve into each step. It's a really great framework, and is about there's a higher power. It's not all about you, much as you're very special. It's not all about you, and it is that mirror. That you're getting mirrored things back to you, and I think that's the thing about triggers. Connie was hilarious at the gathering. She's like, "Oh, I'm getting triggered." But we were laughing about it because we know that's our issue. It's not like, "Nyeh, nyeh, 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 nyeh." It's just like, right, okay, what is that? Why is that annoying me so much?
Exactly.
And I think, and it's quite funny, and it's good if there's quite a few of you, um, that all understand
Yeah.
that, that what the triggers are. It's just an opportunity. Yeah, Lorna's saying the 12 steps saved her life. Definitely, I think that framework, and there's a lot of stuff that obviously in the Bible, the same idea. There's just a way that you can live that life will be easier. But it might not be easier, it'll be more aligned, but it might be very tricky to stick to it. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? We've gone through this big sort of spiritual, do what you want. If it feels good, then do it. Yeah, it's all about me. I can manifest, I can create whatever I want to create. And clearly there's nothing wrong with that. But then you're like, is that why we're here? Is that what this is all about? Are we actually putting a wee bit of the spiritual bypass on it here and ignoring the other side of actually why are we here and what are we willing to do? And I know May is totally a hard worker. I'm the same. People say you do so much, and I sometimes think I'm actually really lazy at heart. I love doing nothing, but Gemini's, you know what it's like.
God,
Got the
yeah.
ability, got the ability to be both. But yeah, it's just a really fascinating time, and I think that's what's going to be fantastic about this retreat is for us as well. Is we always come out the other side,
Oh, yeah.
very very different as well. You learn from every single person that shows up. You learn from them. So it's a very very exciting, and because it's so new, it's quite different from any other retreat probably that you've done. And so, yeah, if you get anything
It's
else,
because I've been sitting on it for a few years because I felt like are we ready for it in the UK? I don't know, but yeah, it feels like now. I think there's like maybe 4 spaces left. So it does. It feels like people are ready to, and that is absolutely not like I'm not saying that we should have been ready before now. I'm just really honouring women now that are really, as we've been talking about, because it's very scary and it's very bold and brave to go to these places. So I'm really honouring the women that are doing this now, that are actually saying, okay, I'm going to look at this, because a lot of the women that are coming with nerves, because they're actually saying, I am not as connected as I would like to be. And that means we're going to be looking at the blockages. You know, you're not just suddenly going to get some magic medicine that's like, what? Yay! Now you're fully connected to, you know, we have to put the work in, and it will be a really intense, powerful, beautiful weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's why I think we really had to just wait until something shifted in the collective, and then we're ready to say, enough. Actually, I've had enough of this shame, this stigma, this um, being stuck in like half living my life, or whatever it is. Everyone's got a different reason for coming. Whether there's a sexual abuse story there and there's just so much fear or shame, or, you know, it can be body shame, it can be all sorts, or it can be fear, feeling unsafe, it can be just like motherhood, just
Mm-hmm.
sometimes numbs you to the fact that you're more than a mother.
And birth trauma as well. You
Yeah.
know, traumatic birth and then no sort of support or understanding after it. There's so many parts about it. And don't think that's what's great about the festivals, because you can get a little taster of all these things without like actually going into a full retreat. And that's what was interesting with Kate. I mean, because she was fantastic, wasn't she?
Yeah.
But it turns out I went in and I was like, I'm going to leave if this gets dodgy.
What does
I mean,
dodgy mean, Lilia?
well, exactly.
Fictional.
I don't know what I mean. We used to laugh in Malta at my friends, you know, using that language, because we're always like, it's that, you know, like polyamory and all that, just kind of a real excuse to just have as much sex with whoever and whenever you want. And so I was really amazed at how fascinating that workshop was. But I think obviously in the share afterwards was so many people felt the same as me.
Mm-hmm.
They came, and one girl even said she started to get uncomfortable, but she was like, no, you will sit this out, you will listen, you'll hear, you'll feel. And I was like, good on you. And that's sometimes just what you have to do. It's so
Absolutely.
easy to walk out and to just, you know, that's the
Yeah,
easy thing
but
to
that's
do.
why important. We need these offerings to come in safe, gentle, easy to understand and digest ways that actually give you that staying power. Because if you go in, like what you might find in Koh Phangan in Thailand, is you go in and that's it. Next minute, everyone's to take their clothes off and start self pleasuring in a group of women that are all around, or you have a mirror and you do your yoni gazing. And I mean, that is not for that's not an initial step into
Mhm.
this kind of work. It's not. It's that's the dodgy, right? According to you and a lot of people, like, I'm not doing anything dodgy.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it's just hard enough to even put your hand there,
Mhm.
you know. And it's like, or to be seen in public, to be doing anything even remotely connected to that area. So it is about the space holders and bringing understanding to it as well. You know, Kate did, and she brought all these archetypes in, and she brought an understanding of what we're actually doing. It's not just push through the barriers and touch yourself in public. That's
Mhm.
not what it's about. And I
No,
think, like,
not at all.
once people can feel safe, that they're not going to be going into these crazy tantric situations that your imagination might, that, like, once we can actually go there and start
Uh-huh.
doing this work, like baby steps towards it, then hopefully there'll be more and more.
Yeah. And it definitely is. You have to trust the person that you're going with, because I know even in this, in when we did the Sedona method, sometimes when you do a lot of letting go, you get very, very ecstatic, and that energy can be misinterpreted as, you know, and some men that were there because they were sex addicts would, you know, start to behave kind of inappropriately. And but I could see how you can get confused. You know, like if you're doing that work and then it's suddenly you think you're actually getting turned on, because you're getting turned into a different frequency, but depending on where you feel it. And I mean, a lot of yogis, etc., they redirect that energy, don't they? Instead of wanting to ejaculate it out, they redirect it back in to the body so that you can use it to transcend into different states of consciousness. And
well,
it's
this
just
is what I
something.
believe Jesus and Mary Magdalene were doing with that technique. So yeah, there's so much Tantra involved in that as well. And it's strengthening your other bodies. And this is why it's important to actually understand and work with it through ourselves, because actually it's another form of meditation. It's another form of strengthening. If that's what you're doing meditation for, it's like, how are we strengthening all of our bodies? And Tantra is one. And I think there's not enough knowledge or understanding, or it's just being seen in these very extreme, like unhealthy predator types of ways of what Tantra actually is. Or anyway, we've talked about it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm delighted that, and you can, if you're around at the festivals, it's definitely something you could, you'll be able to introduce to people, or people can get to chat to you as well. And the goddess gatherings, hopefully, as well, if you can be there. So we can really start to, because it really struck me how many women, I think, you realise, like, my God, how, I'm not even sure what the word, suppressed and damaged. And, you see the self-esteem gather over the few days. But how can you ignore that part? The most creative point, and everything that comes with that. It's such a phenomenal miracle that you can create another human being through our body, but also the abuse and the shame, as you say, that can come with that entire area. So it's time we get that out from under the carpet as well, and just
my nana. I saw my nana last week, and she's 95 or something like that. And she was asking me about, tell me about family constellations and tell me about my family, which is my dad is her son. And anyway, we were having a chat. I thought I have to be quite basic here in what I'm disclosing, because I might blow her mind. But anyway, she said to me, so tell me about my children. So I did as tactfully as I could. And then I said, but you've got 5 children and not 4, because the first one died when she was 1. And she said, oh yes, you know why? And she came closer and she said, you know why? That's because I wasn't mature enough to be her mother. She was 19, and she died of German measles. But this is like, I don't know, nearly, it's like 70 something years later, and she's held that belief that she was responsible because she was the mother. She was responsible that her baby died because she wasn't responsible enough, or she wasn't mature enough. And
almost
so
like a punishment.
That just showed me that it's in the psyche of, and that's just one of a million stories that I've heard like that, and I don't think she's ever said that before. And then she said to me, she was the most beautiful one. The first one, bless her. And I just thought, wow, this woman has carried that for all this time and still believes that. And so, I mean, there's every single woman has got something that's there, whether they've had a miscarriage, whether they've had an abortion, whether they've had, as you say, birth trauma, whether they've had abuse there, whether they're just shy and then they feel like they should have had done more, or the list is endless. I can't like run out of scenarios. So all of us have got somewhere to go to work there with that energy.
Yeah, well, that's exciting that work, because I always say that we need to just get everything out from under the carpet. It might not be that comfortable a process, but yeah, and the more of us that do it, we know the power of the collective. And a lot of what I'm going to be doing is going into a bit of the science of, you know, the collective, how the brains entrain and how the cells mimic each other, and then how and why we create via the music, via the colours, via the sound, the smells, etc. All of that, how we're going to use the 5 elements and nature, and obviously that really powerful place to really get that frequency right up, and that unconditional love frequency will be felt. So it's very
What I feel
exciting.
magical about that place as well is that it pulls everyone together. And
Uh-huh.
it's that thing of when we realise that we're actually not that different. We're all the same. We're all
Yeah.
connected. And even though we've got different life stories, their stories, you know, we all have the right to feel this powerful pleasure energy, source energy. We've all got the right because we're little antennas. We're humans with little antennas. Why does one person have more right than another? They don't. We've all got the right to feel that, to be connected to that. And we've all got reasons why we're not. And we're so similar. And when we can all hold space for each other and let the space hold us, it's so magical that we can actually, that is a massive shift for the collective. When what happens there at Barmoloch, it's so powerful for the collective.
Yeah. And these friendships that are made, you know, when you share these kind of experiences together. You know, we used to get it when we would go sailing, we'd be racing, and, you know, by the end of the week, you were like, oh, you know, that's what was so nice about the Goddess Gathering, seeing Frankie and Sonia. And it was just great, you know,
It's
because just
incredible.
like-minded people that are ready to do the work. And, you know, it takes courage. We know that it takes courage. And you need to be willing to greet as every bit as much as willing to laugh your head off, because you'll also do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a phenomenal invitation. So yeah, I'm excited. If anybody's got any questions, pop them in now, or if you're watching this on replay, I can prompt Vida, or if you've got any. I mean, I'm going to be teaching the Sedona method, the emotion codes, obviously EFT as well, and we're going to be breathing and just lightening that whole spaceship right up till we can fly home. Get high and fly in your own supply.
Yes.
So yeah, I think we've covered pretty much everything. May's saying, so how do we do that? Sorry, May, I'm not quite sure what you were asking about there. Hi, Kaylee, nice to see you there. Bernie. Yeah, I think, is this about a retreat? Yes, May, it is. It's actually 2 retreats that Vida's doing a Friday to Sunday at Barmoloch on
Bubble,
Tantra, and
bubble.
then I'm doing Sunday to Thursday, the 3-day water fast. So that's what we're talking about. But also just to spread the message about family constellations, tantric work, and the new story, and obviously letting go and breath work and the 5 elements and all the stuff that we're going to be putting into this retreat, and a little bit of the science and understanding around the energy systems and the colours and the sounds and the tones, and how we live in this universe of pure sound, and how sound is really going to be an energy medicine is the future, because it does no
I think
harm.
we're both having inner dance, aren't we, darling? I'm doing it and you're doing it, so we'll have 2.
We'll have 2 inner dances, yeah, and we'll also be having the Genius Insight sound frequencies tailored to the group with the
Yes.
suk blow. So yeah, we've got a phenomenal week. Kaz has just booked on to do the fast as well, so she's coming for the whole thing. So
Message me. Yeah, amazing.
yeah, fantastic. Well, I think that's us then. If nobody's got any questions, I will send you the details. Actually, I'm going to my water fast event on its own, and the combined event is on the Heal Scotland events page. So healscotland.com events, you'll find it there. Vida, what where can they find your
VitaHealing.me.
wait a minute, I'll just put Scotland.
I think it's on the Facebook as well. It
And
should be
you
on
are
Heal Scotland as well, because I sent it to Kirsten.
Oh, right. So it'll be on there.
It should be.
Ah, okay, cool. Anyway, any problems finding any of the events, just ping me or Vida a DM and we'll get it sent to you. No problemo. Okay, and if anybody's got any questions they think of later, just ping them into the box and we'll get round to answering everything. So it's lovely to see you all, guys. Vida, great to see you too, darling. It was good to catch up since the festival. May, fantastic to see you too. And yeah, have a phenomenal weekend. And for those of you that are coming to the retreat, we'll see you then. Night, night.